Good morning, everybody who's joining us for the webinar today. Topic of today is going to be how to build a wildly profitable prospecting system. We're coming to the end of 2019. I don't know if that's a shock to you. I know every time I look around, time seems to be speeding up, and I go, oh my God, what happened? Let's be honest. If we're in sales, 2019 is probably over. There's very little we can accomplish. Most of us have a sales cycle a little more than a month and a half, and of course, Christmas shuts everything down. So everything you should be thinking about today is what's going to help you with 2020. So we're going to be walking through a bunch of slides today, giving you some ideas to make sure that you're going to be successful. We got 55 to 60 minutes. Everybody's coming in muted. The way we're going to interact today is we do have some poll questions. There's one that we're going to have you interact with us on. Then there's also a chat function inside the webinar. We're going to ask you a couple of questions occasionally, have you give us a little bit of feedback. And then we're going to make sure that we're providing as much value as we can in the short time we have today. So we are recording it. We will share it if you have to drop off for any particular reason. But the purpose today is how do we create better prospectors? How do we as salespeople become better at what we do? And I was reading Twitter the other day. I don't know if anybody else has ever been on Twitter. And one of the things that came across the Twitter feed was somebody had wrote a statement that if you cannot generate your own leads as a salesperson, you are replaceable. And I thought that's pretty powerful because a lot of times in sales, especially in Alberta for the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years, we haven't had to be that good at generating our own leads, frankly. We've been able to get a lot of people calling us, inbound leads happening. The brand or company's brand has been able to support that. And so it's been pretty positive, pretty easy, right? We haven't had to go find people. But we also know that the economics have changed. Things are much harder in today's economic landscape. And the better we are at prospecting and the better we are at developing our own funnel, the more likely we're going to have long-term success. And frankly, the more options we're going to have as salespeople. So we got 1 hour. We have a mix of attendees today that we need to make sure that we have some people on the call who have been with us before. And we have obviously some people who are new to Sandler. We want to make sure that we're, for some of you, this might be a reminder, and for others, this may be all new. So we want to make sure that we touch on some of those points. Now, as part of this as well, some of you are coming in here with some knowledge already. If you've been part of the Sandler team or been part of Sandler training in the past, you might have some knowledge. The question is, do you have the skills and do you have the habits? We want to talk about some skills today. We definitely want to talk about some habits that we're going to need if we're going to be successful. So let me start off with talking a little bit about what we call behavior, attitudes, and techniques. So attitude, behavior, and technique. I want to dig into that a little bit because this is going to form the basis of our success as we go forward. So a lot of times when we come into these types of webinars, we're looking for a specific skill or what I call the magic bullet. The magic bullet doesn't exist, right? So there's nothing we can either say or do as a one-off that's going to lead to long-term success. What we really need to be thinking about is all three of these in conjunction, right? We need to think about what our mindset's going to look like. What's our belief system? How do we even approach prospecting? We got to think about the behaviors that we've identified that are going to allow us to be successful. And then we got to couple that with techniques. So at Sandler, we put these into these triangles here that you get to see. All three of them support prospecting success long-term. So we're going to be digging into this as we go through the webinar today. I'm hoping that, time being money, that all of us on this call get what I call a 10x opportunity out of it. So what do I mean by 10x? Let's pretend you're making $100 an hour. That's probably a guesstimate. A lot of salespeople are probably worth that. The goal that I want for you out of this webinar is to have one idea that you're going to get that's worth $1,000 to you. If we can do that, I believe that your time today is probably well spent. At the end of the session today, we're going to talk about a couple of next steps. We're going to have an offer for you that's based on the webinar, based on you being part of what we did today. So we'll explain that as well at the very end. So today, first thing we're going to do is we're going to be talking about the poll. We have a poll question for you. We're going to open up the poll, and it's really simple. Not getting in front of enough qualified prospects today is costing me or my team blank dollars. So we're going to launch the poll. We're going to give you a couple minutes to respond to that poll, and then we'll see where it all drops out. We got quite a range here. We got a lot of people in that $100,000 to $500,000 range. It seems to be a popular spot to be. A couple of you in the 500,000 plus, a couple in the 0 to 10,000. So far, we got 60% of people replying to our poll. We'll give you just another maybe 10 seconds to respond, and then we will shut the poll down. All right. So we'll shut that poll down. So the winner of that poll in terms of the most, the number one, or the amount that we're in is that $500,000, $100,000 to $500,000 range. That's the most popular one. Sounds like a big number. I don't know if it is in your world. But the first step in creating some change or some new habits and beliefs and behaviors is identifying how important is that to me? How important is that to my team to get that number into our business or get that number into my overall budget for next year and have sales success? So when you look at that number, that's what you need to be asking yourself. How important is that? What does that really mean to me? I want to start off by talking about the first thing that's going to be really critical. And that is, what is our attitude? When we're talking about prospecting success, what do we have going on in our head that's either helping us or hurting us? So I want to just go to a little definition of attitude. There's a bunch of ones there that, some of them not that relevant to what we're talking about. But I want to go to number 4. So let's go to the next slide. And this is the one that I really want to dig in on, which is a mental position with regarding to a fact or state. So mental position regarding, our mindset in terms of a fact or state. So one of the things that Sandler gave us was this belief wheel. Probably one of the most powerful things when I came into Sandler that really struck me, because frankly, I was scared to death of making cold calls. When I came into Sandler, one of the biggest fears I've had success as a salesperson, but picking up the phone and talking to strangers was frankly petrifying. And I had a Sandler coach, and he said, Chad, it's really simple. He said, if you don't talk to enough strangers, if you don't talk to 2 strangers a week, you will not be successful. All you have to do is figure out how you're going to talk to those strangers. He says, you ever looked at a gumball machine? I said, yeah. He said, do you remember when you were a kid and you went and asked for a quarter from your mom and you said, hey, Mom, I want a quarter. I want to go to that gumball machine. And you put that quarter in and you spun it. And out came the color. And maybe you got black. I hated black, right? Black was the worst color I could get. I had no control over that color. It just came out the bottom. So that was the color I tried to pawn off on my sibling and said, hey, bro, I got a gumball for you. Here, take this one. And then I put another one in, spun it. Out came blue. I love blue, right? Blue is great. Now, I didn't have any control over what happened when I spun that dial. I had no control. I couldn't do anything with that. But, the outcome was completely outside of what my spinning the dial was going to do. And so when I'm talking to salespeople, one of the things I had to really get my head straight on was, you know what? You have zero control over what your potential prospect's going to say or do when you get them on a phone call or when you start interacting with them. You can't control that. All you can control is your action to go do something. That is it. But it starts with your beliefs, because your beliefs are what going to drive everything. So I've met a lot of salespeople who say cold calling doesn't work, Chad. I've met other salespeople who say LinkedIn, waste of time. Waste of time. I can never find new business through that kind of tool. And you know what? If you say that, that's your belief and it's true. You will prove it to be true over and over and over again. So you have to be willing to take a different belief stance. You have to be willing to step back and go, well, what if? What if using LinkedIn as a tool could lead to new introductions? What if using a phone could actually lead to me talking to potential prospects? What if I asked somebody, a stranger, for an introduction and they actually gave it to me? What happens then? Well, you know what? That leads to those actions, right? If we believe something else is possible, it leads to different results, which reinforces the belief. But a lot of times in sales, man, we have these really strong beliefs, and it really can impede or success. And it's really scary how often that happens in sales and leads to inaction. So the number one thing that you need to start thinking about is, what are the beliefs you have around prospecting? Why do you have those beliefs? Who put them there, right? And how have you been reinforcing either your mindset of limitation or your mindset of possibility, right? That's the first thing that we need to do if we're going to be successful. We have to think about that. Now, one thing I want to ask you about, and I forgot, sorry, my apologies, I didn't put the poll up for this. It's just a question I want you to think about. When you think about beliefs, what do you need to change first? Do you need to change your beliefs to get the action, or do you need to change the action and get the belief? So a lot of times in sales, we believe that we need to start believing it works before we'll do something. Science has proven that we need to take action and then the belief follows. Okay, we need to take action and then the belief follows. I want to share with you a quick little story about one of my other clients. When they onboard new people into sales, they give them a list of 100 people to call. And they tell them, you have to call that 100 people in your first week on the job. Now, here's the thing. Those 100 people that you're going to call have no interest in buying. They are not going to buy anything from you. They do not care about what you have to say. In fact, they'll likely hang up on you. All you need to do is do the action. So what happens? Well, that takes a lot of pressure off, doesn't it? Because a lot of times in sales, when we think about prospecting, we're like, oh my God, I got to make a sale every single time I reach out to a potential prospect. And we're like, whoa, how am I even going to do this, right? So we think about all the words we're going to say, we over-prepare, we get nervous, we start tripping over ourselves. And what happens? Poor results. If we take all that pressure off, all of a sudden we don't feel pressure. We're like, hey, you're going to say no anyway. I'm going to make that call. And frankly, nothing's going to happen. And that's okay. I'm just going to do the behavior. What happens? Tonality is way better. You feel good. You're not worried about failure, because failure is only your lack of doing the behavior. It's not the result. And you know what happens to these 100 people that you called? Frankly, it's kind of funny. A couple of people actually buy. And when they ask their salespeople what happens at the end of those 100 calls, how they feel, the comment that comes back was, that wasn't so bad. In fact, that was easy. I couldn't believe that was really simple. So now what's happened to their belief system? Instead of being like fearful and like, oh my God, if I pick up a phone and call a stranger, this is the hardest thing I'm ever going to do, to this isn't that bad. It's pretty simple. And you know what? Nobody's that mean. And so it's interesting how those beliefs change, but they only change because of the action we take. So when we look at that Sandler prospecting success triangle, right, we don't start at the top with the attitude. We don't try to change our belief systems, although there are ways we can work on that. What we start with is change the behavior, right? Do the behavior, and the attitude will follow. Now, when we talk about behavior, I am talking about behavior that's 100% controllable and measurable by you. 100%. So what is not controllable and measurable? Whether or not that person will buy from you. That is not controllable. You cannot control it. You can measure it, you cannot control it. What you can control is making a phone call. You can control that. What you can control is bringing up LinkedIn and sending them a LinkedIn in-mail. You can control that. What you can control is going to a networking event and introducing yourself to 5 people you've never met before. Those are things you have 100% control over. But a lot of salespeople, unfortunately, have this mindset that I'll get to prospecting when I get to it. Once I complete all my other activities, all the things that I have to do every single day, then I'll do prospecting. And here's the thing. What if prospecting is the thing that you least like to do? There's something called Parkinson's Law. So what does that mean? Your work expands, right? So all that stuff you got to do, all the emails, all the phone calls, project management stuff, dealing with client problems, all of that just kind of blows up and does this. And before you know it, it's filled up your whole 8-hour day. And that 8-hour day is no longer available to you. So you have no time to prospect. And you go, oh, I would have done it if I had the time. If I had the time, I would have done it. So that's a problem. We got to stay out of Parkinson's law. And how do we do that is by starting and creating what we call regular actions. So if you've been a part of Sandler at all, if you're on this call and have been introduced to anything we've done, you will hear that word cookbook a lot. We talk about cookbook like it's the most important thing. And it is probably one of the most important things that you could develop for yourself. And so really, what is a cookbook? A cookbook is a listing of regular behaviors and actions that you're going to take on a daily basis or weekly basis, not something that you're going to do here and there. It's kind of like going to the gym. If you're truly committed to getting yourself in shape and getting yourself healthy, you can't just go to the gym once every 4 months when you got a 6-hour window and then work out for 6 hours or 12 hours and say, you know what, I did it, right? You're not going to see long-term incremental change and success if that's the approach you take. It's not going to work. What you do need to do is ask yourself, what are the core behaviors? What are my 4 to 6 core behaviors that lead to results? What do I need to do? So we've listed a few up there for you. You can see them. And some of them that we've circled for you are things like dials per week, referrals asked for. We also circled for you LinkedIn search for new contact. These are all things, and we call this under the Attain File, right? These are things that we need to do on a regular basis. Now, some of you may be sitting here on this call going, Chad, I don't really know what to do. So if you're sitting here on the call saying, I don't know what to do, I don't know what those behaviors are, there's a few tried and true. The first thing you got to ask yourself is, the behaviors that I should be doing, do they allow me to meet and connect with my best fit customer? Do my behaviors allow me to meet and connect with my best fit customer? If the answer is yes, it's probably a good behavior. So let's go back to using a phone. Some of you, doing cold calls may be totally outside the realm of what you need to do. For others, using the phone as a tool to talk to people is still pretty effective. If you do the dials, if you have a list of people that you need to talk to, you don't have to travel. You can do multiple dials in a single hour, and it can be highly effective, right? It can be a real time saver. For others, you need to start the process using email, maybe LinkedIn. That might be the way you're going to do it. For others of you, it might be networking. And probably for all of us on this call, referrals, right? If there's one behavior that we should all probably agree on is very, very valuable, it's getting referrals and asking for referrals. And some of us have a lot of head trash around that. When we teach how to do referrals and how to do that effectively, I can't tell you how many salespeople push back and say, I don't want to be that person being needy. You can ask for introductions all day long. In fact, if you say something like, hey, Sally, listen, I know that what I do is not really useful to what you're looking for. There's really no connection there. But I was wondering if you could help me out. You probably have a fairly big business circle of network of people you know in business. If you were me and you were looking to connect with somebody, is there anyone in your circle that you'd want to recommend me to reach out and call? When you do it like that, help me, anyone else we should call, that's a tactic, that's a strategy. And I can't tell you how many times people will say, absolutely. I know Bill over here, we had a conversation about it. I think he might be a good guy for you to talk to, right? So now I've got a name and a number. Now, of course, I could take that one step further and say, hey, thanks for sharing. Would you do me one more favor? Would you be willing to introduce me just through email, just to make sure I'm not coming across as some, pushy salesperson? Would you be willing to do that? See, because if I get an introduction from them, the chance of them picking up the phone and talking to me goes up dramatically. But you got to know what your cookbook activities are. If you only have one, I guarantee you it will probably fail you at some point. We want 4 to 6 in the cookbook of activities that are going out and meeting or best fit prospect. Or best fit prospect. What do they look like? Where do they live? Where do they hang out? If you're going to use networking as a way to do that, I highly recommend you only go to networking events where they go to. So in my world, I want to meet business owners. I want to meet, small, medium, sometimes large organizations. So I want to know where they live. What I don't want to do is try to sell salespeople, because typically 9 times out of 10, salespeople do not pay for their own training. So I got to be careful about which networking events I go to. So one of the ways I determine which networking events I go to is, do they cost money? I'm more than happy to spend $100 on a networking event, because I know that the level of people that are going to be at that networking event are much more in my realm of people I want to talk to than the free ones, right? So that's how I start making those decisions in my cookbook. So if you don't have a cookbook, the first and most important thing is to start developing one. Now, some of you have a fancy CRM tool at your place of business. Great, nothing wrong with that. It's perfect. You can probably put a bunch of things in there. But for a lot of us who don't have it, there's nothing wrong with something as basic as this, the weekly, monthly tracking sheet, right? Really simple. And there's something to be said about actually taking it and writing it out, just putting it on your desk. Doesn't require a lot of effort, and you can just kind of keep track of how often you are doing those behaviors. Are you consistent? Are you not consistent? Right? If you're not consistent, what is holding you back from being consistent? Is it a conceptual problem? So we see Wally Week Closer here. Wally Week Closer has decided that dials are important. He's got to do 100 of them. But Wally's never hitting 100. He never hits the number. So the question Wally needs to ask himself is this fear? Is this belief? Is there a reason I'm stopping myself from doing it? Or is it, I just don't know how to get that built in my day? I don't have the ability to create this time and space in my day to hit 100. But he's got to ask himself that question. Now, here's the bonus. If you color code it, it's pretty simple to see where we're at. If we had, if this was our behavioral workbook or cookbook, and we had a whole bunch of green up there, man, that would, okay, 50% green, but then there's 50% red. That's a really easy way to tell if we're on track or not on track. So printing it off, using Excel, color coding, there's lots of simple ways to create a cookbook, but you do need to sit down before 2020 and walk through what kind of behaviors are you willing to commit to that will allow you to sit or meet your best fit prospect that has to be out there. And this is just another sample of what that could look like. You can see where there's lots of green or lots of red. When I was taking pilot school training, we had a saying, white over white, fly all night, because as you're flying coming down, there's the different lights you see on the runway. White over red is perfect. And then red over red, you're dead because you're way too low. Red's always a bad color in terms of sales. Green is good, red is bad. And that's a simple way to just keep track of, are you on track doing those little behaviors? Because it's those little behaviors done consistently every single week that's going to guarantee your success in your prospecting behaviors come the end of 2020. Now, distraction. This is becoming a real problem for a lot of people. When we look at how we use time, there's a lot of distraction out there. We get distracted constantly by our phones. People are constantly looking at their phones. And I think in this little graphic, their number is 150 times a day. And if we look at how little we spend on task, right, we're constantly multitasking. What happens is we become very inefficient and ineffective at doing behaviors because we're constantly being pulled in multiple directions. So if you're going to get these behaviors into your game, the number one thing you can do is time block. Now, what does time blocking mean? Time blocking is a real simple activity. You go to Outlook and you block in a period of time where you are committed 100% to doing those behaviors. So if that's using LinkedIn, then you're committed to it. If that's phoning, you're committed to it. If it's networking, you're committed to it. And you do not deviate. You do not let somebody else come and take that time. Time is our greatest resources in sales. It is by far our greatest resource. And we use it, we spend it like crazy on things that do not add value. I know that everybody on this webinar is busy. I know that everybody on this webinar has got a pile of work on their desk. If you do not commit time to prospecting, you will never find the time to do the behaviors you need to do. It's that simple. And so when you put this on your calendar, you gotta be committed to it. You gotta say, you know what? Thursdays from 3 till 5 is my prospecting time. It's every Thursday, and I never let it go. Right? It's that simple. You have to time block. You also have to do a couple of things around not being distracted. A number one problem that wastes time is reading email. A lot of high-performing salespeople make a rule for themselves that they do not start reading email till they've spent at least 1 hour doing prospecting behaviors. Because what happens when you start reading email? Well, now your boss wants something. Now your customer wants something. Now you're distracted doing all this stuff, and you don't do the things that are going to set you up for long-term success. So you got a time block. I want to share another idea. Space block. What does that mean? Space block. Well, I don't know about you, but when you go into your office, there's lots of distracting things in your office. The distracting thing might be the pile of paper on your desk. It could be the RFPs that you're supposed to respond to. The distraction might be other people who just wander into your space and think because you're there, they can talk to you. So if you're going to prospect, find a different place to do it. Find a place that's not distracting, that you cannot be like pulled in 3 different directions on, and that you will actually physically be focused on the task at hand. Time block, space block. You do those 2 things, you're halfway there, right? If you've identified the behaviors, it's going to be much easier for you to execute on those behaviors. So we've talked a little bit about the mindset, the belief side, right? You can only control yourself. You cannot control what a prospect does. You cannot, success isn't selling something in 5 minutes. Success is doing the behavior to create the interaction. The behaviors, right? It's all about cookbooks, planning. What are the behaviors I'm going to do every week? What am I committed to? By the way, get an accountability partner. If you're going to truly be successful in sales, right, in prospecting, and you don't like it, you need somebody who's going to hold you accountable, who when they say, why didn't you, you're going to be like, oh, crap, I don't feel good about that. I'm not going to let that happen again. That person could be your boss. That could be a peer. But if you don't have that in your world, find that. We have some clients of ours who make it a team event. Before they get into the prospecting behavior, they make it a team prospecting session. So Thursdays from 10 till noon is prospecting day. So they shut the phones down, they shut the emails down. Everybody goes and does a little rah-rah speech around the room. They high-five each other, and then they get on the phone for the next 2 hours. At the end of that, they all get back together again, and they share their funniest rejection story. They make it fun, right? Because you know what? There's a lot of rejection in prospecting, and it's got to be fun. So that's what they do. They don't talk about how many sales they made. They talk about their best rejection. Of course, through all of that, they get some good conversations. So we got to have those 2 pieces. And then, of course, you might be doing the dials, you might be doing the phone calls, but you're getting nothing out of it. And it has a lot to do with your technique. There's some pretty scary technique out there. There's some pretty scary habits. And I want to talk a little bit about some of the mistakes that we see out there. First of all, don't create a hate crime. How are you today? Hate crime. So as soon as you do that, hey, how are you today? Bill, how are you today? It's Chad, ABC Company. Right away, you're in a pattern. And you're in the pattern, like they're like, who is this? What do you want? Why are you calling me? It doesn't work, right? It just doesn't work. And it's a habit. And all of us have this habit. It's really easy. Hey, Bill, how you doing today? Hey, Sally, how are you today? The problem with it is it's just not a great way to approach a call because it's like everyone else. So we got to get rid of that habit. One of the best ways to get rid of it is to record yourself. If you're going to use a phone, record yourself doing these calls and listen to it again. How do you sound? What words are you using? Be unjust. Be unjust. Hey, Sally, it's Bill. I was just calling. I was just reaching out, hoping that we could maybe have a conversation. What have you done with your power? I was just. You have now put yourself down. You have said, I'm not worthy. You don't even need to talk to me. I'm just a salesperson. I'm just a salesperson. Big problem. Sing-songy, cotton candy, mother, may I? That's all tone. Tone. Mother, may I tone? Hey, do you think it'd be okay if, right? I was just wondering, Sally, if we could. Tone. We want authoritative tone. Bill, Chad, ABC Company. I thought it might be important that we talk. That's authoritative tone. People, if you're going to use a phone to talk to your prospects, 85% of your message is your tone. That's huge. 85% is going to make a difference between them listening to you and engaging with you, or them going, oh my God, here's another whiny salesperson, I'm out, right? I don't want to listen to them. I don't want to have any interaction with them. So we got to be careful with that. 30 seconds and out. You think it's speed dating. Hey, Bill, it's Sally. Hey, I was from ABC Company. I was looking you up on the internet. I thought we might be good that we talk. Can we have a meeting? Right? You're just so nervous that you're talking 100 miles an hour. Right? It's a mistake, right? Again, people can't understand you. We already can't see you if we're using the phone, right? It's a major problem. And so we want to make sure that we don't make these kinds of mistakes, right? That we step back. So I want to share with you how do we avoid some of that. I'm going to give you some structure here on what this could look like. So we're going to go to the structure. If we're going to, now this, when I say approaching with a call, this structure can be used in an email, can be used in a LinkedIn message. You can use this at a networking event. You just don't need all the parts of it, but you can use all of it. And so the first thing that we always talk about, first of all, we're going to talk about a pattern interrupt. So a lot of times when we wander around talking to people, we're doing patterns, right? So if I'm walking down the hallway of the office, I say, hey, Sally, how you doing today? Sally says, I'm doing great, right? It's a pattern. We're taught to do different things, respond to people in a certain way, but we're not really engaged in the moment. We're not really thinking about it, right? We're just kind of defaulting to our patterns. And we have to do that because in terms of the environment we're in, the brain is getting so many different inputs that if it didn't work in patterns, or we would just vapor lock, it wouldn't work very well. We're going to talk about a mini upfront contract. How do we set the contract for the call? We're going to talk a little bit about that. Personal connection, how important that is. That's really critical if we're going to have some success with this. Fishing for pain, we're going to give you some tips and tools around that. Closing for the appointment and setting the agenda and, of course, the post-sale. Structure matters. If you are willing to do something uncomfortable, in other words, put yourself into a structure and change your habits, I guarantee you your prospecting activities are going to go up in terms of success dramatically. They'll move the needle. You'll have far more success. Of course, you got to do the behavior. You got to believe that just because you haven't done this before, that it doesn't mean it won't work, even if it scares you. So you got to have that what if it, when instead of why that won't work, you got to ask yourself, well, what if it did? In Sandler, we've trained hundreds of thousands of salespeople on how to use this approach to have unbelievable sales success. So if you have a little bit of skepticism, I'm okay. But if it's skepticism and you've never done it, then how do you know until you tried? It's kind of like a kid who says, Mom, I don't want to eat my broccoli, but they never eaten the broccoli. They don't even know what it tastes like. I don't know, I don't know, I won't like it, I won't like it. The parent always says, yeah, but you just got to try it. And then you can make a decision. So if that's some of the skepticism that comes up today, just try it. So let's talk about pattern interrupts. So there's lots of ways that we can create a pattern interrupt. And the first thing, though, that you have to remember is what tone are you going to use. If you use the mother may I tone, it's not going to work. I want you to think about the tone you use if you've got a young person or a kid in your life. I want you to think about that kid. And you're not mad at them, but you want to instruct them. What tone do you use? Hey, Bill, Chad Vanman. Bill, I'm looking for a little help. I'm not even sure it's going to make sense for us to talk. That's the tone, right? You're talking to your kid. You're not mad at them. You just want to, you want to have that authoritative parent tone. And that's what we're doing here, right? So it starts off with a pattern interrupt. Now, pattern interrupts are a lot of times individually specific. There's other ones we can use. One of the ones I've used in the past, and I like to use it, is, hey, Bill, Chad, Sandler Training. I don't know if you've ever heard of us, good, bad, or indifferent. Right? That's one I've used. A lot of times that will get people saying, yeah, I never heard of you. And then I might say, awesome. Then this is a cold call. Can I take 30 seconds to share with you why I even bothered to call? And then you can decide if you want to kick me to the curb. It's that simple, right? Pattern interrupt. Get them out of their comfort zone. Get them thinking differently. If you don't have a pattern interrupt, they're going to right away be, oh, we're into the sales. Oh, cold call. Great. I want to try to figure out how to hang up with you. But it starts with a really good tone. Now, mini upfront contract. I already shared that a little bit. There's two options that we're giving you here. Let me tell you a reason why I'm calling, and then you can decide if it's necessary for us to sit down. Is that fair? One version. Another way, Bill, I'm calling you for two specific reasons. Let me tell you what they are, and then we can decide if it makes sense to meet. Would that be okay? Now, I want you to ask yourself, how many times do you think when we do this, we get permission to do another 30 seconds? I just want you to think about it. A lot of times, if you said 99%, you'd be right. 99% of the time when we do this, people give us another 30 seconds to talk about why we're calling, to share what we call or 30-second commercial. But we're getting permission, right? The number one thing people hate is when permission is stolen from them, when they don't have a choice. If you think of traditional telemarketing, what do? They get you on the phone, and then they just talk at you for like 2 minutes while you're trying to figure out how to get off. Right? It doesn't work. But if we say this, we get you engaged, we get you talking, and I say, Bill, I'm calling you for two specific reasons. Let me tell you what they are, and then you can decide if it makes sense for us to meet. Would that be okay? The two specific reasons is different, right? It makes them go, oh, this guy knows something about me. What does he want to talk about? So we got to have a good two specific reasons. Now, if I'm using that one, here's what I might say. Bill, the two reasons, number one, I was talking to Sally over at ABC Company, and she had highly recommended, based on the work we had done there, that I give you a call. She felt that the work we had done with their team might apply over here, and she thought that'd be a really important thing. That was the one reason I'm calling. The second reason was we've also done a fair amount of work in your industries with other organizations similar to you, and I thought some of that might be valuable as well if we were to engage with you, and that's kind of why I actually reached out to you directly. See, that's the referral personal connection. So referral, if you got them, it's why they're always better, right? When we can use somebody's name to get us introduced, awesome. Bullet point number 2, research about the person you are calling. Man, if you're not, if you've identified somebody on LinkedIn, maybe they posted a blog or they wrote something about their company or about their world, or maybe you researched them and you found out they went to and took part in a specific program or are certified in a certain maybe safety program, and you're selling safety training or something like that. You might want to say, Bill, I was really impressed with that blog that you wrote on LinkedIn the other day about the safety culture in organizations, and it made me think that it might be important for us to reach out and connect, as we have had a large role in helping companies create and develop those safety habits and processes inside of their company, right? See, because it's personal to them. Now, you can also do that in an email. So if you're going to do it in an email, you want to make sure that you use it in the subject line, right? I was really interested in the blog you wrote on safety, right? That would be your subject line. And then you would go into some detail in the email about why that made you actually reach out to them. If you don't know anything about the person, recent and relevant news. That's the other thing. Back to LinkedIn as a tool. If you're in the B2B sales world, you need to be following your prospects on LinkedIn, because they're going to get awards. They're going to be given recognition. Recently in Edmonton, there's a magazine called Avenue Magazine, and it goes through and it lists the top 40 under 40. I read that because I'm looking for prospects, people who are open to change, growth, right? And I look through all of that, and those people are people I reach out to, and then I refer back to that, and I'll say, hey, Sally, I saw that you were recognized in the Avenue 40 under 40. Specifically around business growth and development in your sector, right? So now I've got their attention because I'm giving them a personal ego stroke about something they've done. So you got to make sure that this isn't if you don't have this, your phone call and your email will be a lot colder than if you can put this in. So take the time to make sure that you create a personal connection. We already talked about referral. I'm going to skip through this one a little bit just from a time perspective. Now I want to talk about pain. So when it comes to pain, people want to fix their own problems. The biggest mistake we make when we're trying to talk to people why they should work with us is that we're just saying, hey, we're the best, we're the greatest, we've been in business 70 years, we have the best product, we have the best people, we have the best service. It's all me, 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 me. People do not care about you. What they care about is what problems will you solve for me. If you do that effectively, they want to listen, right? So when we get in there, it might sound something like this. Sally, it's a lot of times when I talk to organizations like yourself, I hear that you have some really good people. You have really good people, a really good team. That's the stroke, right? You have a really good team. That being said, though, the economic landscape of Alberta has changed. And the ability to close deals and get them into the pipeline has dropped. And some of the salespeople are struggling to figure that out. Now, sometimes that's, you got that, you don't have that problem, that's not the issue. But what's really going on is the team doesn't know how to go out and find any new business. They've been working their accounts, and if they can't find any new business, the overall revenue is going to continue to shrink, and that's worrisome. Or maybe that's not even the issue. The real issue is you just can't find and retain top talent anymore in the sales world, right? And because of that, you're unable to go after new prospects. Would any of that be worth talking about? So what did I do there? I created a stroke, pain, struggling, problems, and then what's the impact? It's called, structuring your pain statements. Now, we at Sandler have some tools. We call it the 30-second commercial creator. We go through with organizations and help them use this tool to create an actual solution or something that the people want to listen to. And so when we're looking at this tool, we're looking at what's the story. We want to talk about a couple of the top issues. And then, of course, focus on the prospect. It has to be brief. It's not about you. It's about the prospect. If you take the time to create your 30-second commercial that's about solving problems for that prospect, you'll be far more successful. If you sell to different industries, in other words, if you sell, let's say, to oil and gas, and then maybe you sell to hospitality, and then maybe you sell to construction, each one of them might need a different 30-second commercial. The other part of it is if you phone up a CEO, the 30-second commercial for the CEO probably has to sound a little bit different than the 30-second commercial for the purchaser because they have different problems. But remember, stroke, you probably have this, it's probably you've done well at it. But now you're frustrated because, right, that's the pain. What pain do they have? They're not getting their deliveries on time. That's pain, right? They're having staff turnover. That's pain, right? They're not able to break into new markets. That's pain. Whatever their pain is, you should know what that is. And because of that, their business is suffering. People are leaving. It's costing them money. That's the impact. Stroke, pain, impact. Couple of statements. You can do this on the phone. You can do this in an email. You can do this at a networking event. But it just changes the conversation. So I talked a little bit about that. Another example up here, happy with, occasionally worry about, and then what the result looks like. So we're just fishing for pain. We'll go to the next one as well. Hook question. This is very important. We have to ask the question at the end. And the hook question basically gets them talking. It says, I don't pretend to know your business, but does this even matter? Or have any of those things been talked about? Would they be worth having a further conversation? I am just using the 80-20 rule. If I am prospecting somebody, if I'm talking to them and they are in a certain sector, I know their 3 pains. I know what they probably are. I'm going to use those 3 and see if they're going to engage with me in another conversation. Because they might say, you know what, Chad? Actually, that is happening. That has happened. We have been talking about that. And I'll say, well, why don't you tell me a little bit more about that? Can you be a little bit specific, a little bit more specific? Maybe you can even share a real life example. Now we're into a little bit of a conversation, right? They're going to start giving me information. Now if I'm using the phone, I'm not trying to close business there. If I'm not, using email, I'm definitely not trying to close business. And if I'm at a networking event, I'm not going to sell them something. What I'm going to do though, is I'm going to set the appointment, right? So we have pattern interrupt, mini upfront contract, fishing for pain, close for the appointment. Like, I'm not in a sales call. I'm not going to try to sell you anything in 3 minutes. It's impossible. And you probably have 15 other things that you got to do. So now tone becomes really important, right? When we close, right, I got to go back. I can't be, hey, you know what? Maybe you want to invite me in. Maybe this would work. That's not going to work. So you got to, if they agree, yeah, we've had some problems with that. Yeah, that's been an issue in our world. Yeah, that's really important to us. Now we have to get to authoritative parent. So that means that tone that you use, if you got a little person in your life, now you're not mad at them, but you want to give them some instruction and direction, you're going to say, Bill, can you do this for me? Take out your calendar. Maybe, pick a day that works where you can invite me out. Now, a couple things are there, like tone, right? Directive. Take out your calendar. I'm going to give you instruction. Invite me out. Because how do we treat people we've invited out? We treat them as valued guests. We don't treat them as salespeople, right? So it's important that we have the right tone and that we get the appointment. If we've heard some pain. If there is no pain there, there's nothing, there's no interest, the alternative then is to ask for a referral. Now, I know a lot of you will be going, well, Chad, they said no to me. Yeah, they weren't interested in what you had to do. Maybe they had nothing to do with them, or it couldn't solve any of their problems. But that doesn't mean there isn't somebody in their world who you couldn't be introduced to. Now, that tactic, a lot of times people say, I don't know anybody, or I won't know anybody, but a lot of it has to do with how we do it. So back to the referral, right? When we say, Sally, it sounds like there's nothing we could do here together. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. Do you mind if I just ask you one more quick thing? Permission? Sally will say yes. Sally, I was wondering if you might be able to help me out. We're really trying to grow our business in the forestry sector. I'm just trying to figure out maybe some of the people who are at the controller, CEO type levels, who kind of maybe float inside of your business network, who you think might be worth me just reaching out and having a call, similar to what we've done today. Would you be able to, share anybody like that with me? Now, what's the worst thing that can happen? No, I don't. I have nobody that I would do that. I wouldn't share anybody. But what if 1 out of 50 did that? What could that mean for your prospecting success? Now you have an introduction. Now you can find out a little bit more about why they gave you that name. And the chances are maybe you'll have a warmer conversation with that person that you don't even know that you should talk to. So don't forget to put the referral in. I want to talk a little bit about voicemail and email, right? Voicemail, email. So once, if we've had a conversation and now we want to actually try to interact with people over voicemail or email, it's important that we don't leave too much, right? The problem we have in this world is oftentimes salespeople, we leave way too long of a voicemail or we did this massive email. And frankly, nobody's listening after 5 to 10 seconds anyway. So if we're going to do the voicemail, the bottom bullet point, Dave, Chad Bandman, I've been doing some research on your organization, really interested in the fact that you guys are core certified and we're one of the top 50 employers. I think it might be important that we speak. Dave, call me at 780-449-4906. That's 780-449-4906. Now, if you don't like the important, even though I said it might be important, you can say it might be important but not urgent. If you're feeling a little bit scared about that, you can always add that piece in. So it's, again, don't go crazy with your voicemails. I was just talking to one of my other clients today. We're coming up with a plan of prospecting. And what they had sent me was this very verbose email that they were going to send. And then they were going to, all these attachments. And I'm thinking, well, A, is the guy going to read it? And B, what do you have to go, if that doesn't work, what's next? You've given them everything. So there's no reason for them to reconnect with you. And so when I was talking to him, I called it voicemail, email, dating. I said, you need a 6-point plan. I said, you need your initial voicemail, something like this. I said, then maybe an email, right? Where again, you can put in a little bit of information. Then a follow-up voicemail. In their case, they wanted to drop off some literature at the door. And then I said, then you need another follow-up voicemail if they don't get them. And then you need a final close the file email. 6 points. Most people stop trying to reach a prospect after 1.5 tries. They say it takes an average of 6 to 8 times to connect with people to get them on the phone or get them connected to you. So usually what happens, salespeople are not doing enough of the behavior. One thing I will say around doing that kind of process, just be careful. Make sure that not everybody qualifies for it. You have to clearly identify why you're going to do that with them in order to create a connection. Because if you got 1,000 people to talk to, you won't be able to manage that kind of prospecting process. So email tips, simple, right? I already said that, less than 100 words, personal connection in the subject line, no attachments. I know that's going to scare the hell out of some of you. A little bit of a sample email there we just shared with you. This one is about somebody who's a National Retailers Association. Just talking about you got a chance to review their presentation. That's the personal side, telling them what you've done with them. And then just seeing if there's maybe even a down the road interest. Would they be open to have an exploratory conversation? So real simple, to the point, nothing crazy. So what have we talked about? I want to recap a little bit. We've talked about mindset, beliefs, possibilities. You're not going to change your mindset till you get your behaviors right, though. Behaviors drive the mindset. So you got to make sure that your belief system is not killing your prospecting ability. You have to make sure that you've identified clearly the behaviors that you're going to need to do and to reach your best fit prospect. And then you need some strategies and tactics. Mini upfront contracts, right? You'll need that. You need to understand something personal about them. Developing a 30-second commercial, you're going to need that. And then, of course, the hook question and closing for the appointment. If all 3 of those are working together and you're committed, you will achieve your prospecting goals for 2020. But you got to commit to the behaviors. Most salespeople spend only 20% of their time actively prospecting for new accounts. If you're going to grow your territory, statistically speaking, it's about 50%. You need to find a lot of time to go out and interact with people. So we're coming to the end of our hour, and of course, we're a sales organization. We'd be remiss if we didn't offer you a little something about what we can do next year. So for some of us, we're do-it-yourselfers, and you're willing to go off and do your own thing. Awesome. Hopefully you got something out of it. This will be recorded for you. You can go back and watch it as much as you want. For others, you say, you know what? Probably, I'm not going to do it on my own. I need a little bit of help. We're going to be running a prospecting clinic, a full-day prospecting clinic coming up in January. And we're going to go through some things in that clinic, like turning cold calls into warm calls. We're going to go talking about social media, using that as a lead generation tool. Fears, right? What's holding us back? How do we blow those up? How do we create relationships that get us referrals? Because that's one of the key things that we want to do. Voicemails, how do we do effective voicemail? Creating those scripts, really critical. And what we call the no pressure cold calling 30-second commercial. That for us is one of the key tools that we use to develop business and help our clients develop their business. So buckle up, right? Obviously this webinar was free. What we're going to be talking about is not free. It's a full day. And the question you need to ask yourself is, how much money do you want to invest in yourself and your team? So with this clinic, it's a full day. It's $9.95, which may sound like a lot. Maybe it's more, more than you'd ever think of spending on yourself. And let's just talk about some of the objections that you're going to have right away. That's a lot of money. That's one we hear a lot. Can do it by myself. I've done things like in the past and it didn't work. I'm not sure I want to invest in it myself. And I can't make the date. So this is going to be in Edmonton. What we know about all of this is if this is important for you, think about what impact can it have on you and your team if you were to actually take some time and spend some energy and effort to get this done. So we want to focus on small groups. This is not going to be a big group, no more than 25. We're not interested in having any hostages in the room. We're looking at having people who are truly dedicated to growing their business in 2020 and want to have massive success. So what we know, you can't get other people to make a decision until you make one yourself. You might have the knowledge, but do you have the skills and habits, right? Maybe you have the skills, do you have the knowledge? Maybe you're missing that, I don't know. Wherever you are right now, if it makes sense, we're asking you to sign up. Now, our website, unfortunately, this morning experienced a bit of a glitch. January 24th is the day that we are looking at having it. It will be on the website. We will be sending out an invitation to anybody who's on the webinar today. If you're interested in it, we'd be, love to have you out. We'll send that out to your inbox. And if you want to commit at that time, we'd be happy to have you in. Again, we're limiting it to 25 people. So we're at the end of the hour. We're going to let everybody go. Thanks for coming on and joining us today. We hope that you found your $1,000 idea in the 1 hour that we spent together, because that's our goal, is to have that 10x factor. If anything comes out of this, questions that you want to email me directly on, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to talk to you, help you out with anything that could have come out of this. And our prospecting session coming up at the end of January, we'd love to have you as part of it.